is your no bullshit guide to a happier life. Quick, but not necessarily easy tips to help you to squeeze every last drop of enjoyment out of your business and your life. My name is Helen Calvert. I'm a coach, a business owner and a parent, and I'm so happy to be here with you. I do swear occasionally, as the title suggests, so pop in your headphones if I'm not safe for little ears. Ready to go? Let's do this. Hello and welcome to this episode, which is a little bit different from normal because I am interviewing our fabulous headline sponsor for season 5, Stephanie Ward. Thank you for joining me, Stephanie.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited.
I know. I was absolutely thrilled when you said you wanted to be our headline sponsor. I could not have picked a more perfect person to sponsor this season. So let's get into it and start off with you telling us about the Spicy Brain Collective, which is just the best title ever anyway, what it is and who it helps. Tell us all about it.
Yeah, so the Spicy Brain Collective, it's kind of like we've had to kind of give it a new name because my business is split up into like 3 different entities. And when people were coming to me and saying, what do you do? My answer is like, everything. And apparently that's not useful.
I know that feeling, yes.
Yeah, we really do everything. So the Spicy Brain Collective is kind of like the front door for a suite of sort of services and products that help people with neurodivergent conditions typically. So they're usually entrepreneurs or people in work. And our suite of services gives them everything they need to be able to stay in or thrive in their work and really achieve their potential as well. Not just minimum effort, like scraping by, but actually really excelling at what they do. Because all of the people that come to me have something they're great at, but they hate the fiddly back end naffness. And guess who loves the fiddly back end naffness as a special interest? Oh, that's me. So, yeah.
When your business is your special interest, that's one of the joys of being neurodivergent, isn't it? I realised a little while ago, I thought, I know that being neurodivergent, I'm supposed to have special interests. I mean, I used to when I was a kid, and I've followed bands and I've been a fan of things, but I don't think I have one now. And then, of course, I realised, Helen, your business is your special interest. It's the thing you do every day and can't stop thinking about.
Yeah, that's 100% me. Like, I get really frustrated. So I recently had a grant that was supporting me through the Access to Work scheme pretty much removed, which means I've got to find money I wasn't expecting to fund the PA support I need. And
so frustrating.
One of the really damaging things that was said was, you've told me, Stephanie, that you work 96 hours a week. I, as your case manager, don't think that's healthy. So I'm going to treat this as if you only work 50 hours.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, right. The thing is for me is that when everybody else is like crocheting or watching Netflix at night, I'm writing business plans for new ideas. I'm drafting courses. I'm coming up with new ideas. Like, entrepreneurship is 100% my special interest. And I love coming up with new and innovative ways to reach people. So I would be lying. Like, I'm autistic. I can't lie. I would be lying. Like, if I said I'm not working 96 hours, it would be crap because I am. When other people are lying in bed falling asleep, I'm Googling stuff that's coming to my brain to think, how can I monetize this? So yeah, yes, it really is something else.
So the kind of people that come to you through the Spicy Brain Collective, is it all kinds of neurodivergence? Do you have a typical client, or is that a silly question?
So I say, do I have a typical client? There's a few typicalities and things that like running themes, but honestly, it's like a box of frogs. You never know what you're going to get, really. So my usual client is a late diagnosed woman, usually. They tend to be over the age of 45 and perimenopause is hit and they're like, what is this feeling? And it's brain fog related to ADHD that has been amplified by menopause hormones. But I tend to have people with a range of different sort of conditions, ranging from autism to ADHD, dyslexia, dyscalculia, dyspraxia, or as it's meant to be called, developmental coordination disorder. So we take everyone and treat them just the same. We do get occasionally people who have much more mental health, like sort of strong presentation, like they have a lot more mental health symptoms. But my argument is that the way we do things works for everybody. It works best for neurodivergence, but whatever your challenge is, our approach will work for you. Even if you're neurotypical, or if you're facing any barrier in life, we go through the same sort of principles for everyone, because our stuff is about overcoming barriers and managing the stuff that you've got going on. So it's usually autistic ADHD, but it's everybody really.
That is exactly what I said in the opening episode of this season, is that everything I've ever told anyone on my podcast, in my book, any advice I've ever given, the type of coaching I do, it all comes from the point of view of being an autistic woman navigating this world. Yeah. And like you say, it works for everyone, because I've had to come up with strategies to overcome different barriers and to be able to just cope with life. So I have great strategies for all those things, but it doesn't mean you have to be autistic for them to work for you. It's just, if you are autistic or ADHD or have a different neurodivergence, you've had to come up with ways to cope, because the world just doesn't work for you the way it's supposed to.
Well, this is it. Like, I've got a friend called Richie, and he put it really, really well, because part of my kind of thing is that, you know, we can't expect everything to be handed up to us. And I think there is an element of entitlement across the world and across populations, where people think that they should be handed something because they're disadvantaged. And I wholeheartedly disagree. And I know this is going to sound really controversial, but the way Richie framed it makes total sense, right? Because we were sitting in this cafe, and it was so noisy. Like, there was a baby crying in the corner. There was a door that crunched when it opened, and the breeze was coming in, and the latte machine was, and there was just all of this noise that every time the waitress set a table, she grabbed like 50 forks where 3 would have done, and the waiter's like dinging the bell and then shouting, "Oh, there's a," and it was getting really, and I could see him struggling. And I says, "Mate, like, tell us what's going on for you right now." He's like, "Steph, I can see there's 10 different things in this environment triggering me. I'm not asking them to get rid of 5. Like, I'm asking them to mitigate 5 of them. Not get rid of them, just mitigate them a little bit. So sit me away from the baby, away from the door. Ask the chef to just ring the bell or shout, but he doesn't need both. If some of those things are removed, I'm better placed to handle the other 5." I was like, yeah, that captures my thoughts on this entirely, is that if we meet people halfway and accept some responsibility for our needs, but then also know how to ask in a way that is supportive of the other person, because people can be quite triggered when they're asked for adjustments. So we do need to manage that a little bit. And the better you manage it, actually, the more likely they are to learn from that interaction as well.
Oh, there's so much I love about what you've just said there, Steph. There really is. And I've had that experience myself of being in a situation where I had a meltdown in a cafe and nobody had done anything wrong. I think this is something that is often the experience of neurodivergent people. If somebody does something to you and it's universally accepted as being wrong, most of us at our age can handle that, because, you know, stuff happens and we handle it. But when nobody has objectively done anything wrong, but you're still melting down or shutting down or struggling, then it can get quite tricky. And I did reach out to the cafe owner and say, you know, rather than "I expect to be treated this way" or "you have to do this differently," I said, "Look, would you like some information on how to better sort of communicate with your neurodivergent clients?" Because I'm not saying for a second anyone did anything wrong, and yet here I am feeling like crap. So, you know, it would be nice if we had an open conversation. But you're quite right. It can be really challenging. You know, we've all been on the receiving end of it as well. It can be really challenging being told that when you're doing your best, actually it's hurting someone. So how we have those conversations is so important. And I love your approach that, you know, we're all adults and we need to take some responsibility for ourselves and for how we support other people. So that's absolutely brilliant. Tell me about your neurodivergence then, Steph. Where do you sit on these wonderful spectrums we have?
Yeah, so this is so funny because I didn't think I was neurodivergent. I just thought I was the usual car crash of a human being, kind of like freewheeling it and like seat of my pantsing it through life. So when I had a child with special needs, I was like, what is this world? Like, what is happening right now? And it was my childminder. I'd had a whole situation. I'd left my husband, and then there was an anonymous social services referral went in, and we still don't know who did that. I have my suspicions, as you can imagine. But as off the back of that, I got my health visitor out because it happened twice in 3 months. I was like, I need someone to protect me here because I've not done anything wrong. I'm a working mum. I was young. I was 23 when I left my husband, which surprises a lot of people, with a 15-month-old baby. And they treated me quite hostilely because I was a young mum, young single mum. And so I got the health visitor out and she asked some questions about my son. And anyway, the childminder said, yeah, I think your kid might be autistic. Anyway, flash forward several years, trying to get him in front of the right person to diagnose him was very, very, very hard. But having him in nursery, I had that extra layer of teachers seeing the things. So we went to his diagnostic appointment and we're sitting in this clinic in Hexham, which is nowhere near where I live, but it was the earliest we could get an appointment. And the doctor was explaining, what autism is, where it sits in human consciousness and various things. And yeah, I've always thought I'm more towards that end. He was like, oh, honey, you're quite far out there. I was like, okay. So I didn't do anything with this information. I just kind of sat on it and acknowledged that I have traits and challenges aligned with autism. But when I moved house, I had to move twice in 6 weeks. And actually, that was really hard for me. And I thought, I'm going to have to get some help here. I'm not quite doing my best. And I went and got myself put on the list for an autism assessment. At this point, I was working as a virtual assistant. I had quite a few autistic ADHD clients starting to come through my caseload. And one of them was a diagnostic clinician. So she's a GP with additional ADHD diagnostic qualifications. And she said, so when were you diagnosed? I was like, what, with my hip dysplasia? Because I have that as well. I'm a complete broken teapot. She said, no ADHD. I was like, I ain't got that. She went, oh, you want to get that looked at. And actually, when I sat and thought about it and I looked up what it looks like in women, what I realized was so many things fell into place for me. And it was actually really upsetting because once I realized that I wasn't the problem, I got really, really dark mental health wise. And I'm eternally grateful for a lovely lady called Lisa. I helped her apply for access to work. And she said, you've helped me so much. Let me help you back. I've got a link with a private clinic. I'll do your pre-assessment for free and get you in front of this doctor within 4 weeks. And she did. And I'm very privileged that I could afford the private care. And I sat in front of this doctor. I booked the appointment on the 15th of December for, I think it was like the 3rd of January. And between booking the appointment and attending, I bought a Cocker Spaniel puppy, knowing I'm allergic to dogs, can't walk very far, right? And worked from home and would have to clean up after this tiny little thing. And the doctor kind of looked at me. I'll never forget the look on his face. He went, would you like to try Concerta or Elvans first? Like, oh, yeah, okay. So I started my medication in January 2023, and honestly, I can say it saved my life. If I hadn't got diagnosed when I did, I wouldn't be sat on this podcast today. I would not be sitting having these conversations. It was a very dark time for me. And my dose has gradually been increased because I'm ginger and gingers process medication differently. So that was
how fascinating. That's so interesting.
There's a whole thing. I'll tell you one day about the whole anesthesia and ginger people thing, but
wow.
I have quite bad sickness after surgery, and it turns out it's because it takes a lot of anesthetic to knock me out, and it's to do with ADHD and gingerness, basically, in tandem. I'm the girl who counts down from 100 on the propofol, and they get to 27 and I'm still awake. They're like, seriously, go to sleep. But yeah, so the ADHD diagnosis actually came before the autism one. Autism was in the July, and that was a story of its own. I turns up to the appointment. I'd seen the clinician's name on the letter. I'm like, I recognise her name. Oh, she was one of the moms from school. So she said to me, she went, hey, so I've been watching you at Sports Day for the last 3 years. So we both know how this is going to go. I was like, oh, great. And it was good because I knew who it was. I was able to be unmasked. So she was able to get a very good capture of what my autism looked like. And I scored 47 out of 50 on one test and 42 out of 42 on the other.
Wow.
And I showed my friend and she was like, A star, congratulations.
You win.
Yeah. So I'm pleased I've got the stickers on the box to say what it is, because for me, I needed the sticker on the box to validate it. But for a lot of people, they don't need that. If they can accept themselves for who they are and acknowledge the challenges are consistent with these conditions, they don't really need a diagnosis. And I love that so many people are now validating self-diagnosis.
Yeah, that's my story. I mean, there's a lot in there that resonates. I had my eldest son got diagnosed with autism, and part of the process, by the time we got to the end of the process, we all knew already that he was, and everyone was accepting that he was. The diagnosis was a tick box. But by that point, we realised just how many members of the family on his father's side and my side were neurodivergent. And I think that's the really big journey, isn't it? You get the kids diagnosed and then you think, oh, this might be relevant to me. And then you look at your parents and your other family members, and then you look at literally everything that's ever happened in your family ever. And you realise that it's all related to neurodivergence. And I can understand what you mean about the dark time, because there's a real grief there when you look back on your childhood, on different experiences, things that went horribly wrong that didn't need to go horribly wrong, experiences that were so hard when they didn't need to be, if only someone had understood that it's neurodivergence, not naughty behavior or whatever we got told we were when we were kids. So yeah, that's really interesting, Steph. And I'm self-diagnosed autistic. I've done the good questionnaires, if you like. There's a range out there, but I've done the good ones with someone who knew what they were talking about. It came out that I'm not ADHD, which didn't surprise me. But like you, my autism scores were fairly high, shall we say, fairly conclusive. And at the moment, I don't feel like I need a diagnosis, simply because it all makes so much sense that if somebody told me I wasn't autistic, I would just tell them they were wrong anyway, which I think that's quite an autistic thing in itself, isn't it? I know I am. Shut up, leave me alone. So.
And there's a bit of research, though, that says that the majority of women who self-diagnose and who come to clinics have self-diagnosed correctly, because the nature of our conditions is that we're very curious for knowledge. So we've done the rabbit hole. We've gone down the questionnaires. We've spoken to professionals. We've listened to the right resources. And so we've collated enough information for the clinician to just basically sign it off. So
I saw a brilliant social media post the other day that said, thank goodness for social media when it comes to female health, because there are so many female health conditions, not just neurodivergence, where actually, if it wasn't for social media, a lot of us wouldn't know what we have, how to get help, because female conditions are not brilliantly researched, shall we say, but that's another rabbit hole I'm sure we could go down another day.
Yeah, I mean, my hip dysplasia, I was in pain from being 15. It's a birth defect, which was detected when I was 25.
Wow.
And the only reason I actually got that diagnosed was I happened to catch a locum GP who was like, I don't like you being 25 and on crutches. Let me send you for an x-ray. And I could see on my own x-ray, it wasn't shaped right.
Gosh.
So I went home and searched like hip problem x-rays and discovered my own dysplasia. So by the time I went back to the GP for the results, I'd already found a consultant that I needed to see who was actually based locally. I can honestly say, if he was ever listening to this podcast, AJ Malvier saved my life. Like, he rebuilt my bones, he gave me my body back, and he gave me what I needed physically to be able to go back to work and achieve my potential. Without him doing that part, I wouldn't have discovered this other neurodivergent part. So yeah.
And this is where that old cliche about it being a journey is so true, because you take different steps and you think, oh, I've figured it out now, and then there's a whole other load of steps in front of that. But I do want to delve into neurodivergence and healthcare on another episode, because I've had my own numerous experiences of healthcare, and like you say, my GPs, both of my GPs, have been people I've known outside of the doctor's surgery, which for some people they don't like that, but for me is essential, because the idea of trying to explain myself coherently to a stranger in 5 minutes is just so overwhelmingly awful. I need someone who already trusts me and already believes that I'm a competent human being. Yeah. But again, that might be a discussion for another day. But to bring it back to business, what do you wish all business owners knew about being a neurodivergent entrepreneur, whether it's them or whether they're working with neurodivergent people? Are there things that you just wish you could like put on a billboard for everybody to see?
Yeah, I think so. I've got this kind of 3 like sort of principles of like what you need to be able to thrive in business, and it's tailored around neurodivergence, but actually it works for anyone with any kind of barrier. And so I think those 3 things are execution, the art of execution, and being able to get things done, but actually know it's not necessarily you have to do it. It's that you can give that away. You need to just know how to get things done. It doesn't mean you have to do that stuff. And there's this big advocacy piece around being able to stand up and say what you need. Like those mediocre white men in grey suits who tell us what they think we need. They're not the ones to listen to. We need to know ourselves to be able to stand up and say, actually, you are not correct. This is the thing for me. And knowing, like I said earlier, about the sensitivity and to asking people for what you need as well. It's knowing how to advocate in a way that is not unkind to others. There's certain things that really should be called out. I will never stand behind anything like hate speech. Yeah. But actually, when you call someone out, it needs to be done correctly to make sure that they learn from the experience, not get defensive and double down on their incorrectness. But there's this piece around tenacity. And when I interview people for jobs, I will say to them, like, what makes you proud, right? And there was this one guy I interviewed who said that what made him proud was that he had fled Syria with his 6-month-old baby and his wife to come to the UK because he knew it was the safest place and he had connections here. And like, you know, whether you're battling against neurodivergence or battling against literal war,
yes,
everyone's fighting something. And if you haven't got that tenacity to keep fighting when everything feels absolutely awful, what's the point in getting out of bed? You might as well just rot in that bed under your duvet and never get up again. So,
oh, Steph, I love you because you're so straight talking, which is just my jam, morning, noon, and night. I mean, that's why you're the perfect sponsor for this season of the podcast, because you talk about, you know, being execution, well, being able to get shit done was all of last season that I talked about. And like you say, there's the most important thing about getting shit done is doing it in a way that works for you. There's absolutely no point, as you've just said, listening to a load of other people who are probably a different gender, a different brain type, a different life experience, who are telling you you must do this, that, and the other. And advocating for our own needs and doing so in a way that doesn't push people further into their own entrenched views. I mean, I could not agree more. Preach, my dear. Absolutely.
But you know what it is as well, though? It's like with my VA services, what we do is when we get people, they're usually in quite a horrible place, like mentally, when they come to us, and they just need someone to get in the hole with them, right? So our approach to it is always assuming that this relationship is not forever, okay? So the way we start is we kind of do it with a done for you approach. So we will be like, what's the hardest stuff right now? Give me it. Give it to me and I'll carry that bag for you. So you can focus on just getting into a rhythm with the stuff you're the best at. And then we work towards like giving them back that autonomy. So it's starting with taking the bits away and then gradually giving them back piece by piece in a sustainable way, so that if, you know, their funding is pulled or if something changes for them and they don't have the money to bring in the help, they are able to do everything themselves. And you know, I've got various tools that I've brought in to do that, but it's more about the pacing of it than it is about the logistics. If you can pace it, the majority of people who come to me are highly, highly intelligent and can learn everything. But just because they can doesn't mean they should. It's useful to know how to do everything in your business. It is, but also, you know, having help's great. But if something goes wrong on a Sunday evening, knowing that you can fix it yourself and having those systems built around you is like extremely important. And that's why when we do our services, we do it this way.
What an absolutely fantastic service. I mean, that is so exciting to hear, not just that you're there to, like you say, take that big bag of stuff away from people and let them breathe, but also empowering them to take it back if and when they need to or want to. That is superb, Steph. What an amazing service. So how can people find you and get involved with the Spicy Brain Collective?
Yeah, so if you go to the spicybraincollective.com, we've just got like a Linktree sort of style homepage with all of the buttons. The best way to get in the trenches, get in straight away, is to join our free community. So we have a community in Heartbeat Chat. We've taken it out of Facebook because Facebook is very noisy and it's very easy to get buried in an algorithm, and it means that people miss things that would be really helpful to them. So it's in a whole other app, and we have a rousing pep talk every Monday morning, so everyone can come and get smoke blown up their asses and be really excited about the week. We will hold that space for you to be excited, even if you're not feeling it. I will bring the vibes. It's all good. There's things like free trainings in there. There's additional levels in terms of, you know, courses you can buy into for your business, but that's the best place to start, really, because you get to see what our world is like. You get to access our resources and we will help you. So spicybraincollective.com is the first button at the top. Just hit that button, get in there, and
I will make sure that all of those links are in the show notes because, to make sure everyone can find you. I love the idea of just like Monday morning having smoke blown up your ass. That is the most brilliant way to say it, Steph.
I think there's so many people, like, they're all self-employed, they're all working in the house, they're all sitting on their own, and they're lonely.
Yes.
And a lot of the time, a lot of the people that like find me, they don't have a partner or a family member who gets what they do, and they're not celebrating their business with them. So that in itself is an additional layer of loneliness.
It is. It is.
It's awful sad.
I know, and just being able to celebrate ourselves and feel like we're doing good things is so motivating. And I think a lot of people miss that piece when they're working by themselves. So yeah, that all sounds superb. Thank you so much. Thank you for supporting the podcast. Thank you for coming on. And as I say at the end of every podcast, so I'll say this to you and to the audience, let's be excessively kind to ourselves. And that's how we're going to squeeze every last drop of enjoyment out of life. Speak to you next time. Thank you so much for listening. If you'd like to find out how to work with me or how to get your hands on a copy of my book, you can find all of those links in the info for this episode. My huge thanks to Stephanie Ward of the Spicy Brain Collective for sponsoring the whole of this season of the No Bullshit Guide to a Happier Life. You can also find out more about Steph's collective for neurodivergent business owners via the links in the episode info. See you next time.